Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Likes Books. Today I have a really kind of like fun, cool video to do. I mean, not cool because it's me, which I am, and not fun because I am, but anyway, it's kind of a fun topic, and I got it from a viewer that emailed it to me, and I had never heard of this before, right? And it is the Reader's Bill of Rights. And so we're gonna talk about it in a second. And you've probably, a lot of you have heard of it, because when I went to go Google search it, I saw it everywhere, and I was like, how have I never heard of this before, right? And it's fantastic, and I love it, and it's something that embodies a lot of the discussions that we have on BookTube. So what I think I'm going to do is, I think that I'm going to read them to you today, and then going forward once a week, I'm going to make a video based on each one of the Reader's Bill of Rights, if that makes sense, and have a discussion about those specific Bill of Rights. So anyway, or that specific Bill of Rights. But they're very, very interesting, and they were created by a French children's author named Daniel Pennac. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. So there's 10 of them. Let me read them to you. They're fantastic, and then after I'm done, I'll kind of discuss them a little bit. The Reader's Bill of Rights. Number 1, the right to not read. Number 2, the right to skip pages. Number 3, the right to not finish. Number 4, the right to reread. Number 5, the right to read anything. Number 6, the right to escapism. Number 7, the right to read anywhere. Number 8, the right to browse. Number 9, the right to read out loud. And number 10, the right to not defend your tastes. And I sat there and I read this and I was like, oh my God, these are the things that I battle as a reader and as a booktuber, right? On a regular basis, so many of these things. So I want to talk about them at length, one at a time going forward, but I kind of wanted just to discuss them briefly. The right to not read, you know, I feel like as a reader, especially as a booktuber, when you're wanting to pump out videos and all this kind of stuff, and this is funny because I am doing a buddy reads right now with Julia Sapphire. We're reading, well, I'm reading, she finished, Rumble by Ellen Hopkins, and we started it like 4 days ago, and she read it in like 2 days. Well, the last couple days have not been big reading days for me, right? And so last night I sat down and I actually read a lot of it. But before that, I just was not in the mood to read. I hadn't been, you know? Even listening to audiobooks, I was like, I want to listen to music. I want to dance in my car. I don't want to read. And sometimes I feel guilty of that, you know? I'm like, well, I feel like I should read as a booktuber and as a reader and as a readish person or bookish person, right? But anyway, I'm not going to feel bad about it anymore because it's on my Reader's Bill of Rights. Number 2, the right to skip pages. Now, I rarely skip pages, but if I do, it's only to like get done with a book that I've been reading for a year, and then I kind of am like, why am I reading it anyway? But I should, if I want to skip pages, I should skip pages, right? Like there should be, I think the whole thing about these Reader's Bill of Rights is that really there should be no rules about our reading. Like we should define our own rules as we read and as readers, don't you think? Number 3, the right to not finish. Okay, I have struggled so hard with this, you guys. If you've watched my videos, you know I've done whole videos on DNFing books and I do not finish a book. And I really struggle with it. And like, it's so weird. Physically, if I don't finish a book, I have to take the book and get rid of it. I have to donate it to the library, or I have to like give it to Goodwill, or I have to get it out of my house, right? Because if I don't, it's gonna drive me nuts. And recently, I had talked about Love in the Time of Cholera, and that years ago I read it, and I struggled so hard with that book that I had it like down to reading 8 pages a day, and I had this whole piece of paper on like what pages I had to read. It was insanity. And I had it like all, have you ever done that? I mean, I was like, this is crazy, right? And I had this piece of paper that would say like, you know, February 3rd, you know, read these pages, and February 4th, read these pages. I just did this recently with Helter Skelter, and I didn't even follow my schedule. So, but that book, I keep on finding in the basement. It is haunting me down there with that stupid calendar inside of it. So I should just say, listen, I'm never going to read it and just give it away to somebody. Number 4, the right to reread. I'm not a big rereader. And in fact, you know, I kind of sometimes, like when people reread books, especially people that are younger and they've reread books like 3 times, I'm like, with all of the fantastic books out there, why would you reread a book? But you know what? Like, I have reread books, and the second time, I get so much more out of it than I did the first time. And recently, I reread To Kill a Mockingbird, and you guys know it's my favorite book of life. And it still is my favorite book of life, but I read it at 45 a lot differently than I had read it in 6th grade, you know? It it had a different kind of impact on me. I read it as an adult going through these things instead of as a child going through these things. And, you know, Catcher in the Rye has the same effect on me. The older I get reading that book, you know, when I read it when I was 18 years old, it was very fun. It was very relatable. Today, it makes me sad when I read it. And, you know, I think that's what's interesting about literature as it, you know, we grow older and we change, or at different times in our life. You know, if you, like, I read a lot of books when I was drinking and using, and I'm in recovery now. I've been sober for 23 years. So, like, when I was reading books like Fitzgerald and Hemingway, that, you know, where they were expatriates in France and the whole time they were over there partying, like, I was like, yes, I related to it and I felt very bohemian. When I read them now, like The Sun Also Rises, it doesn't have the same effect on me. So, you know, but sometimes when I reread a book, I love it more the second time. So I totally understand why people reread books, and I don't look at it the same way. And if you want to reread a book, reread it. Just read the same book every day for the rest of your life if you want. I mean, it's your right. It's your Bill of Rights as a reader. The right to read anything. You know, I think for a long time I went through this whole thing where this is interesting because I just recently read a Nora Roberts book that I really liked. But if you had asked me like a month before, I would have been like, Nora Roberts, seriously, who reads her? James Patterson, all of his books are the same. And I think that there's like this stigma to those kind of books, you know, those top 10 pulp kind of books that are just like pumped out like that. But for a lot of people, they really, really enjoy them. I have a friend of mine that collects, no, it's not my friend Tanya. I have a friend of mine that collects every James Patterson book that comes out, and he loves them, and he's like, oh my God, they're so good, and they're so different. I'm like, I don't even argue with him because he enjoys them, and that's all that matters, you know? The right to escapism. I talk about this a lot on my channel, how, you know, escaping is a big part of why I read, that I like to go into other worlds, and I like to read about other people's stories and find out about characters, and it's nice, you know, to just, even if you're not having a bad day, to maybe just relax and go somewhere else for a little bit, or see somebody's, a different perspective, you know? What's interesting is that I'm right now, a lot of times I read books that kind of mirror what I'm going through, and I'm reading Lily and the Octopus. I think Ricky sent me the copy of it, but I'm listening to it on Audible. And thank you, Ricky. So my dog recently, Pee-Pee, we found out he had heart disease. Lily and the Octopus is about a sick dog, and it's about a gay man who's about my age that has a sick dog. So thank you for all of you out there that always want me to read these depressing dog books, but I love them, right? And I was listening to it last night, and I had this moment that I was like, this is really cathartic for me to read. Like, this is, even though I'm escaping my reality by reading this book that is very close to my reality, at the same time, it's really making me question things about my own sense of reality. You know what I mean? Like, it's making me think in this surreal world of characters and whatever based on the truth. It's making me think a lot about grieving what I'm going through right now as well. No, he's still alive. Pee-Pee's still alive. But one of the concepts they talk about in there is that we grieve our family and our friends as we get older before they've even passed away. And it's this whole concept of like, I'm not gonna get into that. I'll do a whole story. I'm gonna do a spoiler-free review on it, so I'll talk about it. But it's really good for me to be able to escape into another realm, but at the same time kind of referencing my own life, if that makes sense. And that's what I love about reading. Number 7, the right to read anywhere. You know, I think that this is, have you ever been somewhere and you're like, I can't believe that that woman is sitting there in a restaurant by herself reading? But now I love it. I'm like, oh my God, I love to just take a book somewhere if I'm by myself for lunch or whatever and just sit down and read. And I know people are looking at me like, look, he's just kind of reading a book. And I'm like, get over it. Or just like sitting down on a park bench and reading, you know, like in where my office is, there's like a lot of like outside places. And I love to just open my Kindle on my phone and start reading. And people think I'm on Instagram anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I love when I go to like the most random places and I see somebody reading a book and I'm always like this, like what are they reading? I'm always trying to figure out what they're reading. I love it. The right to browse. I mean, I think we all do that, right? I don't think that's one that needs to be discussed. Oh, I almost lost my phone. Number 9, the right to read out loud. I don't do that because that would drive my husband crazy. And I don't feel like I really retain it, but like there's a lot of people that like to read out loud, you know? And it's interesting because my friend Tanya, she always likes to bring books up and like say, I want to read you these lines are beautiful. And I do that as well. And I like to incorporate things I've read or repeat them to friends of mine and be like, oh my God, I want to tell you this. And because, you know, like words in a book that we read out loud are really very carefully crafted sentences describing life. And I think when you read and you're a reader and you love books, you appreciate the art of words. So to hear them out loud it puts them in a whole different spectrum, and I like that. I like hearing reading out loud, and I miss the days back in the day that, like when I was a little kid, my mom would read to me out loud. I still, to this day, love to be read to out loud. And Tanya, like if I'm reading or something, she'll go on, and she'll just sit there in the car with her eyes closed. She'll go on, keep on reading. And number 10, the right to not defend your tastes. And this is kind of what I was talking about with the Nora Roberts and the James Patterson and stuff like that. By the way, I loved Nora Roberts' newest book. If you haven't watched my spoiler-free review, I loved her newest book. But, I don't think anybody should have to define their tastes. I think if you like to read, I think that's fantastic. If you read one book a year, I think that's fantastic. If you read one book in 5 years, I think that's fantastic. If you don't want to read, don't defend it to anybody. If you love to read, but you only like to read picture books, that's okay. And it doesn't mean you're any less or any more of a reader because of what you read. It just means you like to read, and you like to read specifically those kinds of things because that's what you like to read, and there's no reason for any of us to defend that. And when I read that one, for me, that's really important because a lot of times, especially as an English major in college, I think a lot to myself like, this is trivial crap, I shouldn't probably be reading this, but then I read it and I have so much enjoyment out of it. A good example of this is Big Little Lies from last year. I really, really enjoyed that book, but I was like, this is kind of like just like pulp novel, right? Like this isn't literary fiction, it isn't, but I am so past that at this point, I don't really care. I'm gonna enjoy what I like to enjoy. I'm gonna read what I wanna read, and I'm gonna have fun with it because I spend the majority of my free time reading. So anyway, those are the Reader's Bill of Rights. I'm going to talk about each one of those at length in discussion videos. If you guys want to talk about it more, we can talk about it in the comment sections, make your own videos about it. I think it's a great discussion to have. I love you guys, and I will talk to you later. Bye.